Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I'm very excited. We have three awesome returning guests. John, good to see you. Mark, good to see you. Alan, good to see you. Everybody's here. It is fantastic. I'm very excited because we're going to be talking about making a mark on society. But before we get into that, make your mark, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and that way you get your email in the morning whenever we go live, which is, of course, every day. Just a quick heads up so that everybody knows none of us are doctors, so anything we do say comes from our own personal experience and anecdotal evidence from our lives. If you do have any thoughts or questions, by all means, put them up in the comment section, and we can put them up on the screen and discuss them from there. Any initial thoughts before we dive into the conversation ahead of the
Yeah,
game?
just
John,
just
what
a
do you
real
got?
quick one. I want to get in front of it because while I was in my IG chat that I just came out of, my live IG, I was getting comments in there about people were leaving my IG chat early to get prepared to come on over and listen to this panel because everyone's considering it mega. So way to screw me over, boys. Way to screw me over. But no, in all seriousness, well, that did happen. But in all seriousness, people are stoked about this panel, and it's because you're all heavy hitters. And
Mm-hmm.
so looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's gonna be sweet. So we got first right off the bat, Winter Storm. Good morning, everyone. Live from the park with my girls. That's how to do it,
Nice.
and that's fantastic. So let's dive into the conversation then. Today we're gonna be talking about making your mark, and this is, I think, an interesting concept because it kind of plays into the world of, legacy and leaving something behind and so on and so forth. But I'm going to give a quick definition on the phrase and the meaning of it, and then we can move forward on the conversation. So it right now what I have is the phrase "make your mark" or "leave your mark" is used to mean that someone should have an impact on the world. Basically, that they should do something great that is widely recognized by people. The simplest definition is to say that make your mark is equivalent / synonymous to achieve great success or make people remember you because you are so good at something. Now, the origin of the phrase is actually from archery, as in to make your mark was to hit the target with your arrow. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on what you see as making your mark versus what the definitions are, because definitions can be challenging sometimes. So, Alan, let's start with you. What are your thoughts initially on making your mark?
So does the question pertain to personal or is like how like impact society in general?
Let's go with society in general.
I feel that well, by that term, making your mark, um, to me would be more of the sense of how much are you benefiting society with the actions that you do.
Mm,
There's a lot of different people that make their mark. One of the most well-known ones are conquests, are big ones, but I feel more things along the lines of when I think of making a difference in society, something like Martin Luther King comes to mind.
Mm,
Um, Now, of course, there's other ones. Alexander the Great, Napoleon. They've left their mark as well, but I don't feel as impactful or has the same amount of depth or longevity as something that Martin Luther King did.
mm.
So I'm
I,
more along the lines of those actions.
I like it. Mark, how about yourself?
I think it's similar to what you said earlier with regards to legacy.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's about living your life by a certain set of values, doing things that, first of all, are very challenging, but also potentially people say aren't achievable. And so, despite the odds, you go out and you do it anyway. in a positive way. And as a result of your actions and what it is that you do, you help to change the lives of other people, either in that moment or in the future, even after you're gone. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? You leave something behind after you're gone, which still has a positive effect on other people's lives.
That's a good way to look at it. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I like what you said about having the arrow hit the target. And you know, I'm I'm not one of mine to think that anything I'm going to do in my life is going to, you know, change the world. I mean, I certainly don't think that. Although I guess it would be kind of nice. But I really think it's about having our own goals in mind, and then achieving those goals. And I think the goal has to be something more farther reaching than just what is going to mean success for us. It's really got to be something to do with how do I make my little slice of the world better for other people in some way. And I often think about this, that if everybody just tries to do their bit, their little piece, to make their portion of the world a better place, then the entire world is going to be better.
Right.
So I really think that's what it's about. I do like what Mark said about values. I think if people take the time to be introspective enough about their own personal core values and what behaviors they need to display or exemplify in order to live in accordance with their values, you're going to make your mark in some way. You're going to make the world a better place in some way, and I really think that's what it's all about.
Interesting. Sean, what are your initial thoughts?
So exactly 10 years ago, as I'm reminded every day, I have OneDrive, Microsoft OneDrive. So every morning I'll have a quick reflection on what I did a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever the case is, whatever photos I've collected over the years that are on my Microsoft OneDrive, I get reminded on the calendar. And so precisely 10 years ago, I was riding across something called the Seven Summits, which is an IMBA, International Mountain Bike Association, epic. And it's called epic because it's freaking epic. It's a really hard trail. And so the Seven Summits IMBA epic is known throughout the world as a gnarly mountain bike route that people travel around the world to come and ride, or certainly travel around North America up here to where I live to do the route. It's hard. And so if you do the Seven Summits once, it's notable. You've kind of left your mark on yourself because it's that hard. I got it in my head that 10 years ago I was going to do it 3 times in one day unsupported. So that's 21 summits. To the best of my knowledge, no one in the world has done it because it's really hard. I'm not saying that I'm the only one in the world who can do it, because I know a boatload of people who could do it, but they haven't. And I hope that they do. And the reason that I hope they do is because I think leaving our mark, I'm not trying to change the world by riding a mountain bike trail. I'm trying to leave a mark on myself. But by leaving the mark on myself, I'm impacting my world around me, not the world that I don't understand, that isn't connected with me. I'm talking about changing my world with the people who are involved with me. And if they can see me leaving a mark on myself, they can see me doing something that is maybe inspiring for them. Now I feel like I'm leaving a mark in the world. I hope that the 21 summits that I did 10 years ago inspires someone to go do 28 summits, do 4 laps of the 7 summits rather than 3 laps. But I think my initial thoughts are this. It's my job, or I believe it's our job, to leave a mark on ourselves that our world that's connected to us is inspired by, so that they can themselves go out and leave a mark on the world as an inspired position.
Interesting. Now, Mark, you just recently tried to, can't remember what it was, the open water swim that you were doing
Yes.
just a little while ago. Did you think when you were doing it that you were making a mark on the world, or was it just like, I want to see if this is even possible for me?
selfishly, it was just to see if it was possible. And I don't need to say to you guys, but you're probably very much the same. My circle is veteran heavy,
Mm.
and they're all a little bit nuts, and they get a little bit bored from time to time, and they suggest these stupid things that they want to do, and the swim was one of them. And for those who haven't tuned in before, I only have one arm, no legs either, so it was just literally in the open water, swimming against the currents, the tides, and all that with one arm to try and break a world record. And again, selfishly, that was my focus. I wanted to see if I had what it took to break that world record. And with the support of a great team, we did it. And so in regards to making your mark, leaving your mark, I hope that small accomplishment left some sort of mark on the open water swimming community, the disabled community, maybe the veteran community. Just a lot of the stuff that I try to do now, I try to promote the message of improvise, adapt, and overcome. And I think when it comes to leaving your mark, if something like that, for example, when someone says your name long after you're gone and they think improvise, adapt, overcome, then I think you've done it. You've left the mark.
I like that a lot. And John, you rode across the U.S., right, with a small baby and your wife? Was that more of a personal, like, hey, I'm just gonna try this, or was it like I want to see if I'm capable of it?
Yeah, it was back in 1983. I was somewhere around 26, 27 years old. I had just served 4 years on active duty, left the Army up at Fort Lewis, Washington, and worked up there for a while, and then decided to move back to northeastern Pennsylvania. And I suggested to my wife that we bicycle across the country because it had been something I wanted to do for probably about the last 6 or 7 years before we did this. And I just suggested to her that, hey, we're on the West Coast, we're going to be going to the East Coast. Why don't we take this opportunity to take on this adventure? Because I thought it was a cool thing to do. I realized that with a 15-month-old baby, it was going to be a little bit more difficult, but it really kind of, I think, hopefully sent a message to people that, hey, you have young kids, you could still do things, you could still go on adventures, and spent 3 months on the road, 4,500 miles, because we took a kind of a circuitous route. We went all the way down from Tacoma, Washington, down to Pueblo, Colorado before we headed east, just because that's a route I wanted to take, and there were some things there I wanted to see. And
that's legit. I mean,
so
deviating that route to down there, that makes it more legit.
Yeah, so we were cycling in over 100-degree heat, but we stuck together and we did it as a family. And my wife and I are going to be married 43 years this September, so
Wow.
that
Congrats.
trip certainly didn't adversely affect our marriage. If anything, it made it a little bit stronger. But yeah, it was a great adventure and something I learned a lot of leadership lessons from, and was just happy that my wife had the courage to accept my offer, and it was just a great adventure that we continue to talk about to this day.
That's fantastic. I'm going to come back to you in a second here, but Alan, you got something? Oh, I got you on mute here. Hold on.
Oh.
There we go. You're good. Go ahead.
So, how did the baby turn out with that trip?
Well, he was in the Marines, and he's in his 40s now, and he's doing really well in life.
Okay.
So didn't have any adverse effects on him.
Okay.
Well, it turned him into a Marine, right? So,
There you go.
Hey.
yeah, I got it. Alan, I want to talk to you about just for a second on, when you were starting to get Weedify sorted out, was it that more of a, I just want to help, I want to do something, versus I want to change the world, or, I want to make a mark? Was it a bit more of a personal journey than a group journey?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Meaning, I felt that if I could change one life, just one, it would have a ripple effect. And I knew that getting the message out that something that I've tried works, and having Joey have his situation and feeling that he couldn't continue on doing anything athletic or anything, especially something as complex as jiu-jitsu, that if I could at least get him over that and get him into it, then he would get stuck to it, and it worked out well. And by that, by him being out there and showing and showcasing the things that he was able to accomplish would leave everyone else with no excuses, and that would be the inspiration that was needed to actually get people involved. So it was,
And that was the inspiration.
Really.
That was the inspiration, mate. Because sorry to butt in, but we have an organisation over here very similar to We Defy, inspired by We Defy, called Reorg, doing something very similar in the jiu-jitsu space, and it was Alan and Joey that inspired that to be born, and me to start jiu-jitsu, because I saw what Joey could do, and didn't think it was possible until I saw it. And so, you know, you're talking about leaving a mark. You left a mark on me, and hopefully that, like you said, will continue to ripple. So thank you, Alan.
I literally got goosebumps, man. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's huge. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
That's fantastic. Sean, you got some thoughts?
I do. And to carry on in that theme, I don't want to give away too many details, but because of Alan with We Defy and because of Mark, connection with Reorg, and the various people that I bumped into, to include a guy called Seb Lavoie, maybe there'll be something happening up here in Canada in respect to We Defy in the near future, or not. Whatever. It's not my story to tell. It's Seb's story to tell. So the inspiration of an individual wanting to be helpful or change his world, as Alan wanted to, has changed the world. People that Alan doesn't know, like Mark as an example, maybe wasn't aware that he had an impact on Mark. And what I find fascinating now is the collective, when we started, it wasn't trying to leave a legacy. It wasn't trying to impress anyone out there in the world. It was just trying to connect with people and have conversations and see where those conversations went and maybe figure out how to do life a little bit better. And ironically, now looking at this panel, we've got Mark was impacted by Alan. Alan I got to know through blah, 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 and John and etc. And it's a strange little trajectory that we are all on of staying in touch with good people who are leaving a mark in their world, and we all get to see it happen in the real time. So looking at the panel right now and trying to figure out how this panel is going to look in a year from now, and the stories that this same panel would be able to tell on the marks that have been left just through this conversation is fascinating to me. So thanks, fellas, for everything that you've done, and I'm happy to be riding your coattails along for the ride, as it were.
Standing on the shoulders of giants, I think that is what we do. The question I had that I'm gonna postulate to the panel here is, do you think that, you know, making a mark or leaving a mark, or, you know, wanting to have a legacy, do you think it ever starts as a, you know, I'm going to put my stamp on history? Or do you think that it's more of, you know, because we all kind of have the same story. I wanted to help one person. That's why I got into podcasting, right? I had some tools. I wanted to pass them on to the rest of the world, see if anybody got anything from them. But that is the beginning of a story that has led us to this position here. So I'm wondering, do you think that there is validity, I guess, to wanting to stamp your mark on history? Or do you think that it is more of an altruistic, you know, I just want to help one person, and then all of a sudden the flow of history kind of takes you there? I'm going to start with you, John. What do you think?
Well, I think most people, you know, I'll say like us, start out just trying to help one person or two or three people. And when things work right, when the universe is in the right setting, it just spreads like the stories that were just told there. And I think it's really awesome how what started, I believe, with Sean is spread to Mark, and then just spreading. Actually, it started with Alan, went to Mark, might go with Sean. I just think it's fantastic how things work that way. Now, I think there's probably some people out there who might start out with, their ego might be so big, or they might be so confident that they start out thinking, hey, I want to change the world. And I think there's certainly some people out there like that. But I think 99% of the people are kind of like people, right here on this panel, that just wanted to try to help one or two people. And just because what they were doing was so powerful, so big, so inspirational, that it began to spread. So that's what I believe.
That's a good point. Mark, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, so I was injured at the end of 2007. I was going through recovery in 2008, and social media was just kind of becoming a thing. And all I did initially was just like live my life and maybe post a little bit about it. This is when there were few platforms, and I started to get some messages from strangers who were facing difficulties. Not all military, some civilians. And I remember thinking, in those early days, I'm not really in a position to help anybody. I'm trying to figure my own stuff out and make myself better. And then as I progressed through that journey and more people started to help me, I started to feel more able to help other people. And so it started really small, and then more platforms were available. I started more accounts, started sharing more of what I was doing. So it never really started out as me waking up one day in a hospital bed going, I'm going to change the world, because all I wanted to do was change my own life. But as time went on and more people got in contact, and I did what I could to help that one person, like you said, and then that next person, and that next person, you kind of got to a point where you needed to be a bit more smart with your time. You can't individually help everybody. So I just thought, if I document, if you like, what I do in my life, it will reach more people quicker, and it can help more people quicker. And it kind of grew from there. So it wasn't like like I said, I didn't wake up in a hospital and go, right, I'm going to change the world, because I wasn't interested in anything like that back then. But when you change one person's world, it feels good. And, having been someone on the receiving end of that who needed that support and got that, it was a privilege to be able to pass it on to help the next person. And so it feels like it's your duty at that point to just help as many people as possible. And then it just becomes literally a part of your life, something that you do every day, whether you're doing it or not. And it feels good. And, if you can help people, if you can make your mark and leave a legacy by doing things that make you feel good, it's almost like you've cracked the code, right?
Yeah. I like that. Alan, what do you think?
Uh, I honestly don't think that if someone's out there to change the world, I mean, it's a almost arrogant type statement, but there could be a lot of, and this is hard to actually, because very hard to articulate. Honestly, along the same lines of what Mark said, if you just focused on that one person, and it is a really gratifying feeling. There is no doubt about that, and there is a lot of the ability to be able to do it again, and you have like a blueprint for that to be able to help. It almost becomes an obligation to be able to have to do that, because if not, it becomes, like, in a very negative sense, selfish. Why wouldn't you want to spread this? Why wouldn't you want to, help other people better themselves? And there's a lot of people that go out there trying to do that, and some are successful and some are not. I think the ones that are very genuine in their intent usually come out on top and do the most amount of change.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Sean, what are your thoughts?
Well, I feel the same way that once you are in the trajectory of trying to be helpful for others, once you're in that lane, you're in that lane, and you gotta like keep on keeping on. And the more you do it, the results that you see that are not notable but are worthy or righteous. The moment that I feel like I'm helping someone to become better, now it's a responsibility. Now it's a duty, as was said, and that sense of duty or that sense of responsibility to others is sometimes missing for veterans. And, looking at this panel, we're all veterans, and we're all in the game of trying to be helpful for others. It's satisfying. It's way more fun than doing burpees. I can say that for sure. Where's the harm? If it's helpful to me, if it's helpful to others, if they feel better in their life, if I feel better in my life, as Mark was saying, then where's the downside? I suppose the only downside is this. If you aren't finding balance in your own life as you're trying to help others find balance in their life. And we'll see what the panel thinks about that.
Yeah. John, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, Chance, again, as I was hearing everybody offer their thoughts, I was thinking that, I think it's a universal rule. When you seek to serve others, you actually end up serving yourself. And I don't mean that to be in a selfish way, but in a good way. When we try to find ways to help other people, we provide a purpose in our life, which really allows us to just be more of the human condition, and it feels good. And I wish more people would think that way, not think about how they could be served, but rather think how they could serve, and then in turn they're going to be served at the end. I will say that just personally, very inspired by Mark's story. It's stories like that where people face adversity and then find a way not only to overcome adversity, but to help other people in the process. I think that's just such a life well lived. And again, it's just very inspiring and motivational to know people like Mark and everybody else on this panel. But that's what I think. I think the more we look to serve, the more we end up being served ourselves.
I like that a lot. Alan, you got any thoughts?
I think one of the purpose part that John just mentioned, it's been combined to my life philosophy is there's no greater purpose than to help someone in need. And that's always been at the top of, basically my personal mantra. And that's what I just try to keep following. If someone is in need and I can help them, why wouldn't I? And again, if I can help them, there's a lot of times where in this foundation, I've had to recognize my limits and literally verbally just be up as direct as possible, going, this is above and beyond what I can deliver. I don't have the education or the background, to help you solve your problems in this end, but let me find someone for you. So understanding your limits is also another big part of this, to where, because you don't want to, and it can be with the best of intentions, but if you go kind of like outside of your lane, then I think that can actually do more harm than good. And knowing your limits for that is definitely one of the big key factors in this. Just like, as long as you take care of yourself first, then you can help others. It's like the whole, oxygen mask on the plane. It's always the parent before the child, because if you can't do anything, then you can't help anyone else. So the same concept goes with this. And as proud as I am, and as much as we offer with Weedify, we still have limits, and we have to recognize those limits and be able to actually say, hey, this is as far as I can go. I can find you some A, B, or C to seek out more help, but this is as far as I can go.
Yeah, for sure. As much as we want it to, jiu-jitsu can't solve all the problems. It can solve most of them, maybe not all of them. Mark, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, no, what Alan said and Chance back then, I was going to jump in if there was an opportunity to say that too. But I've kind of been in this world for over a decade now, and because of social media, email, and at one point I was for 10 years working with an organization called the Royal Marines Charity. So every day I'm face to face confronted with people that needed help, and you do get to a point where you feel like you're overflowing. And luckily, I was able to figure out how to deal with it. And I have no shame in this at all. There's an organization over here. I'm doing a 4-day bike ride from on Monday. They're called Rock to Recovery. And they provide coaching, counseling for men and women in the military and the emergency services that are struggling with their mental health. They were friends of mine, so I would go to them every once in a while when I needed it and just say, look, this is cool. I figured this out. I've dealt with this, but I'm taking on so much of other people's energy, like negative energy, that I need to get rid of it somehow. And actually, this affected my wife too. She was working with veterans in Plymouth, where we lived for 3 years, and she asked for some sort of release for over 2 years to her hierarchy. She said, I'm taking this on every day from people, and I'm going home and I'm passing it on to my family. I need to talk to someone to let this out. And no one ever helped her. And to the end, she had to leave the job because it was affecting her so badly. So what you're saying, Alan, Chance, is absolutely right. There are limits, and you need to recognize when you're approaching that limit. Otherwise, you're just going to melt and burn out. And I know we all want to, and lots of people watching this, listening to this, will want to help as many people as possible. But you need to do it in a positive way, where if it starts to feel a little bit negative, if it's draining you, then you need to go and let off some steam a little bit and put your oxygen mask on.
Mm-hmm. Sean, you got any thoughts so far?
Yeah, I agree with that. And funnily enough, one of our guests yesterday, we had a couple of guests on. One of them was Sam Laird, and he asked me specifically in the green room, hey man, he was talking about how consistent we'd been every day, never skipped a beat, yada yada. We committed to this, and we're committed. And he was just kind of from the sidelines saying, giving us an attaboy for delivering on what we said we would deliver on. And he asked me a very specific question. He said, hey Sean, are you enjoying this? Like, is it fun for you, or have you found a way to make it fun yet? And that's kind of an important question. Not too many people ask me that question, by the way, that directly, and certainly not in the green room after we've done a live potty. And I said, yeah, I am. But my answer to him was quick and concise, but not complete, because there's parts of it that I don't enjoy. But that's the trick, man. I'm not trying to make a mark out on the internet through anything that I do. I'm trying to make a mark on myself. Like I'm trying to push my pace, and whatever that delivers as an outcome, well, that is the outcome. But my general direction is trying to serve the community as a whole. And so I put the mark on myself. I push the pace in a general direction for the mission, which is the collective, as it were. But every once in a while, if we're not asking ourselves, am I in balance right now? Like, do I have a handle on this? Am I pushing too hard, or am I frazzling at the edges? Sometimes I kind of get lost in the operational tempo, and I don't mind a little bit of kinetic energy. So I'll start frazzling at the edges and ignore it. So it's good that if we can't get a balance for ourselves, that we have friends like Sam yesterday who says, "Hey, man, is everything good? Is the balance good?" Which is generally what he was asking. So never be afraid to not reach out to a friend, but if you're involved in a conversation with them, never be afraid to say, "Hey, is everything good? How's your balance?"
You bring up an interesting point. I mean, Mark, you guys talked about this as well, but we had a conversation a little while ago about the difference between the inspirer versus the influencer, right? And social media is it's an interesting landscape. And, you see a lot of people on there trying to be influencers. They're trying to make their mark by maybe using skill sets that are not community minded skill sets. Let's put it that way, and that they're very self-serving. But at the same time, we kind of have to do that in order to be an inspirer, I would think, at least a little bit, because we have to promote ourselves. We have to promote the show. We have to promote, the John, you're doing leadership consulting and stuff like that. You have to be able to promote yourself. You have to be able to promote what you do and where you come from and all these things. And same thing with Reorg and same thing with Weedify. And there is a level of self-promotion, but it's fueled by the community, if that makes sense. So I'm wondering where that balance is for you. John, I'm going to come to you first, but what do you think where the balance between influencer versus inspirer sits?
Yeah, that's something I really struggle with is the self-promotion part because you're right. I do keynote speaking, I do leadership workshops, and I am the brand. I'm the product, and I, as a military professional, one of the things I learned in terms of a good leadership attribute is not being a self-promoter, being a servant leader, character-based leader, all those things that all of you understand. And I was really struggling with the fact of self-promotion until I realized, hey, I'm the product, and if I'm going to get a message out there that I believe is a good message, and I don't want to get ultra-religious here, but I believe God works through all of us, and really the messages that we're getting out there is a message that I believe, God wants us to get out there because it's a good message. It's helping other people, and we are simply tools to do that. So the balance is, there is a fine line between, promoting yourself and really promoting the message and the good message that you're trying to get out there. And I think you really have to be a little bit cautious and not I think you have to guard against getting caught up in the success of your nonprofit or your organization or your company or whatever you're working toward, and understand that it's not you yourself who is getting the good stuff out there, but it's God working through you to get the good stuff out there. And I think that keeps you humble when you think of it that way. And before I turn it over to the other panelists, I just want to say that whole message that you all were just talking about a leader has to take care of themselves first, I think is a very good message. And again, talking about servant leadership, we always talk about how we as a leader could serve the ones we lead, how we as a leader could serve our followers. And obviously that's an important aspect of leadership, being a servant leader, but you cannot serve your followers unless you keep yourself healthy, you keep yourself strong, you keep yourself fit first. So I do think perhaps that's not something that's talked about enough, but I'm glad you all brought that point up, is that a leader has to take care of themselves so they could take care of others. So that's my thoughts, Chance.
That's a great point. Mark, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, John, because I struggled for a long time too with the self-promotion piece, and maybe it's just a military thing. It starts off lads giving you a little bit of, banter. You know, if you're on social media and you're posting a video here or putting a photo there, but and while it is just banter and it's all in good nature, I think because of the way we're trained, you go back home and you're like, oh, really, should I be doing this? Shouldn't I be doing this? And probably 8 years, 8 or 9 years it took me to feel comfortable with using social media. But similar to what you said, then I started to realize it wasn't me, it was a message that I was promoting. It wasn't about me at all. It was about getting the message out there, the lessons out there, you know, things that I'd learned and doing what I could to help other people through those experiences. Now, what I've learned in the 15 plus years that I've been using social media is that, and there are people out there that will put on a mask and, you know, try to be this motivator and say they want to help people and, you know, X, Y, and Z. But the ones that aren't genuine will get found out very quickly. You know, and similar to you, in 2010, me and a group of guys, we ran from New York to LA. First big charity event that I did, and the leader of that event was one of those people that it was about him, it was about his ego, it was about securing a job when he left the military, and he was found out on the second day that we set off. So, you know, I think if you're not genuine in your heart about your reasons for doing the things you're doing, you'll get found out very quickly.
Alan, you got any points to add on to that? Oh, you're muted here, buddy. There we
So
go.
I agree with John and Mark. It's something I've struggled with for a very long time is self-promotion. Even one of the people that I looked up to business-wise that was a veteran, started his own company and branched out to do a whole bunch of different things. And it resonated with me when he said, you have to advertise the product. And if you are the product, you have to advertise yourself. And it's not necessarily, just like Mark said, what about you, it's about the message that you're carrying, that it is possible, that you are able to do this. And here's an example. So I think it's more of, I get humbled more by the stories that we get from people that are in the program. After reading Mark's book, I mean, that was absolutely incredible to me, the things that he goes through on that and how he built himself back up into a new person. You know, it was magnificent. And I think those stories are just the way that my mind is wired is so much better than mine. That's not the way you should be looking at it, and I understand. It's hard to kind of get away from that, but I've always told my guys, especially in WeFi, don't keep promoting me. Promote athletes, promote their stories. Have them, because everyone has a different story, and those stories really can relate with other people's, a lot more, I think, than just me. And you have that broad spectrum of people that are struggling with different things and are finding different ways to cope with it. I think that in itself is very inspirational.
Yeah, for sure. Sean, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm still pretty new to social media in some regard, and I'm still making mistakes and trying to figure things out. But how I am trying to figure it out is by tracking guys like Mark as the example. Now, here's the bad news for me. Freaking Mark Ormrod setting the pace that I can't keep up to because he's like 7-8 hours ahead of me. Like, he's in the future. Because he's over in England, I'm here in Canada, he's in a different time zone, he wakes up before I do. Like, he's already been up 8 hours when I get up. So, like, he's set the pace in front of me yet again. He's such a jerk. But one thing about Mark is he has what I believe, a good balance on social media. And to some degree, it's not that I've mirrored some of Mark's actions on how he treats social media. I've I've used Mark along with a bunch of other great people that I track on social media to try to figure out what my balance is. Because it's a tricky balance, man. Like, I don't want to talk about me, but I know I've got to talk about the collective. And so trying to figure out how to do that is super difficult. It's really complex. And I feel like most of the time I get it wrong. And so when I'm feeling like I'm getting it wrong, I look outwards to the people who I think are doing it right, and I use those as calibrating milestones, like Mark as the example, to figure out how to put out the message that I think is important for the collective while trying to somehow keep myself out of the news, as it were. And it's no easy undertaking, but I think Mark, you do a great job. So thanks for putting in the hard work in the trenches for those 15 years of social media. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I got one more thing to add.
Okay.
Because I don't know how to do this as well as maybe Mark and the gang. With the collective, I did, and Chance, you can clarify this if you want, but one rule that I put as a general rule of thumb is anyone on the guest panel today, any short clips, any moments in this conversation that are so awesome that it gets like a 90-second clip or a 2-minute clip from this show and gets repushed out to the interwebs. I said I don't want to be in any of those clips, and I don't want you, Chance, to be any of those clips, because this show is not about us. It's about the guests. And so any clips that come out should be about the guests, not about me, not about Chance. And it doesn't matter how awesome Chance's message is. I don't want that as a short clip. I want it to reflect the guest's wisdom, not any minor wisdom that we have. So I think within a group like this, it's easy to pull some awesome clips. So that's not the struggle. I think the struggle is understanding how to remove your ego out of the equation when you're trying to leave a mark on your own little world.
That is a tough struggle, and it goes into my last question here. And I'm going to give a little story. So when I first started realizing that I had some skills that I wanted to bring to the world, I was looking around for somebody else. I was looking for some sort of leader, somebody else. I always said I was looking for a paragon to come down from the hill, from Dwyer Hill. Some JTF2 dude was going to show up and be like, all right, boys, this is the way forward. Follow me. And I could just kind of follow along. And I waited for probably 2.5, maybe 3 years of just sitting there going, well, somebody will show up. Somebody will show up. Somebody else will do what it is that I see needing to be done. Up until I got to a point where I realized that I guess no one's coming. So I'll just start. And then if I start, then somebody else will come along and they'll be able to do it better, and I'll be able to just move out of the way and let them go. So the question kind of goes into that in terms of the ego portion, but also if there's somebody out there that has an idea or wants to leave their mark or has this concept that they think will help other people, but they're waiting for somebody else, what would you tell them to get them either moving or get them started or give them that little shove into the limelight? You know what I mean? To get them to really utilize their talents rather than waiting for somebody else to do it. Mark, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
I mean, I think the first thing I'll say is that it's not easy. And I'll be very honest with you now, that there's things that I've wanted to do, like Hugh said, for a couple of years now. And I think what holds me back, this might sound a bit strange, but it's imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want to run courses about focused on resilience, and you've seen that kind of thing. Bring people in, throw them in ice cold water, thrash them around all day, push them past their limits, deprive them of some food and some sleep, and then 2 days later give them a certificate, and they go off feeling great. Things like that. And I always at the last minute stop myself. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. Who am I to do this to these people? And Are they going to get any value from it? Am I the right person? And I wait, like you said, I wait for someone else to come along and go, I tell you what, Mark, I'll lead it. You be second in command, and then we'll go. And if that happened, I would do it. But I think it's almost like a calling. That's your signal to step up then and be like, okay, if I feel like I'm waiting for someone to come along and take charge and run this thing, that probably means that I should be doing it. And so that's what I'm going to do. I've got a couple things over these next few months that I've got to get squared away. But I think going into next year, I'm going to finally take that step and just see where it goes. And if it fails, it fails. At least I'll learn something, and then we'll go on to the next thing.
Outstanding. Alan, what about yourself? There's a little bit of a lag there, but there we go. Go ahead.
Hear me all right? I agree. It's one of those things where I think patience and determination in what you're doing plays a role. Anytime you try to master any type of skill set, it's patience, right? You're gonna have good days, you're gonna have bad days. You're gonna have days where you're rethinking everything you've done in your life, if this is the right path, or you need to restart, and I'm kind of amazed that Mark actually brought that up, the imposter syndrome, because that's something that has been plaguing me for years as well. And knowing that you have the ability, the knowledge, the experience to be able to be up in front, you have to recognize that yourself before you actually do that. And once you do recognize that, I think you can go out, right? Just like basketball. But it's that self understanding that you are who everyone is kind of describing you as. And just like we were talking about earlier, if you have this understanding that, I've done a lot of things, but this guy has done way more, and this guy's done way more, or this guy, who am I to lead this whole movement? And once you kind of clear that out of your head, that you're there for a reason, that is your purpose, then I feel that starts to melt away. And that patience and determination pays off in huge ways.
Yeah, 100%. John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just tell anybody who's thinking of, starting something, getting their message out there, is that they have to understand everybody has a voice, and everybody's voice is unique. Everybody's experiences are unique. Our experiences are as unique as our fingerprints are. And so everybody has a valuable message to tell. And I think we just have to realize that all of our experiences, just take the 5 people on this panel here. Everybody's experiences are a little bit different, but everybody's experiences could help other people succeed in their life, because what I have to say may not resonate to certain people, but what Alan or Mark have to say might resonate with those people. So everybody has a role in getting their message out there if they're sincerely interested in helping other people. So don't let that hold you back. Get out there, put your message out there. You have a voice, find your voice, and you'd be surprised how you're going to find that there's people out there that really appreciate your particular experience and your particular take on certain things. So go out there and allow people to hear your voice, allow people to hear what you have to say.
Mm-hmm. Sean, what do you think?
Well, I also have wicked imposter syndrome, like the wickedest of wicked. In fact, so much so that we did an entire episode over here on the Collective on imposter syndrome. And I think that imposter syndrome can hold people back. It's held me back from time to time, but, it's that classic case of you've just got to believe not in yourself, but believe in the process. If you can't believe in yourself, then believe in the process. and then believe the people around you who are saying like, bro, things are going okay. Don't sweat the details, which I've heard from time to time. And onto the put your voice out there or let other people hear your voice. Well, that's not what I thought. I didn't. I never thought that at all. I didn't want anyone to hear my voice in front of a microphone. It was my friends who were encouraging me to get in front of a microphone. In fact, it was Seb Lavoie who Jedi mind tricked me into stepping in front of the microphone. And so that's an important aspect is I never wanted this, but people convinced me that this is the right thing to do. And now that I look back on it, I can see that it was the right thing to do. But at one point in my life, there's no way you could have dragged me in front of a microphone. And so I think if you feel the calling, listen to it and execute against it. But if you don't feel the calling, but someone else is convinced that that's your calling, well, maybe you should listen to them over a couple of conversations and see where it goes.
Yeah, 100%. Now we got a couple of comments here, and then we'll get some final thoughts. I just want to hit these before. Winterstorm 427 put this in earlier, right when we started, but I think we kind of talked about it. He asked, do you feel that people should focus smaller, local community and family, when making their mark so they don't give up because of a perceived failure to change the world and then give up early? And I think we touched on that a little earlier, but anybody got any thoughts on that outside of what we've already talked about? Sean, you got
Just the definition of failure or perceived failure. I mean, it's only a failure if you fail to help anyone. But if you help someone even like 0.0003%, it ain't a failure. And so you're not changing the greater world around you. You're changing your world. You're changing your friend's world. You're changing your community's world to some degree, whoever you're connected with. So it's never a failure if you move the needle for someone.
Yeah, 100%. And then we got Dr. C kicks in. He said, I would also have that mentors can be a huge asset, and also people who are familiar with whatever endeavor you're taking as a guide, 100%. And he carries on. He said, I've been a big fan of Dale Carnegie's theory: help other people get what they want, and you will get what you want. I really love that a lot. So let's get some final thoughts as we're running short on time. John, I'm going to start with you. Any final thoughts
Yeah, I
on
would
making
just
your mark,
echo.
leaving your mark?
I would just echo that Dale Carnegie thought. I mean, it's all about helping others in order to get what you want in life. It's all about helping others succeed for you to become successful, and helping to serve others so you in your heart feel like you are served. So totally agree with that. And the last thing I want to add is, personally, I believe we are instruments of God. We are instruments to get the good word out there. And I think, as Sean said, if we're called to do that on our own, please follow that calling. And if we're not, but somebody is calling you toward that, probably a good idea to listen. I thought that was a great comment Sean made. Thank you.
Absolutely. Alan, what about yourself? See if I can get your mic unmuted here real quick. There we go.
To touch on something that Sean said, the perception of failure. Short story on this. When I was doing the Olympic lifting, when I was heavy into that and competing, I would only post my successes, right? And there was one time where I just thought it was funny because after looking at it, I just looked like an idiot and acting a fool, kicking the weights. I'd miss a lift, I'd miss another lift, I'd try again. And there's probably about 8 or 9 clips of me lifting a weight and dropping it and failing repeatedly. And one of the things that I noticed the most was out of all the posts that I had of my successes, there was a few comments, some likes, but that one had an extraordinary amount of likes and content engagements. And the way that I perceived it was, people are interested in watching me fail. And I held on to that for years, and it wasn't until I was talking to a friend of mine, and I brought that up just, and they're like, is that what you really think? Or is it something else? And I just had to think about that for a while, and I I honestly didn't know. And the people are connecting with that because is that you're human, that you're not like an extraordinary Superman, or that that you have failures. It show as well that you have the ability to connect, and because you got to show both. You got to show the failures that turn into accomplishments. And I think that's one of the big things that I struggled with for the longest time was, people's perception of what I'm doing as viewed as versus an accomplishment. But the way that I looked at it constantly was, yeah, but Dmitry Klokov is doing snatching what I need, so I must be doing something wrong. Versus in the state of Texas, I held the state record, so I must be doing something right. And when I made that connection, I think that was the first time that I actually okay, that makes sense now. I'm relating more to people. People can see that I have failures, I have accomplishments, and that I am human. And it started to make a lot more sense. It's like now things are even are balanced.
Yeah, 100%. Mark, some final thoughts?
Yeah, I think my final thought is just, when it comes to making a mark, we're not all going to go out there and make this huge difference and be remembered for hundreds of years after we're gone, and that's fine. I think if we can just make a little difference in just one person's life and leave a mark on their life, then we win.
I like that. Sean, what do you think? Some final thoughts?
Yeah, so not to disagree with Mark, who's in the future, in a different time zone, Mark. I'll just say this, that I think we are impacting people in the future. 500, 600, 1,000 years from now, they'll be able to listen to this podcast, this episode. And it's not my intention to create a body of work that exists in the future for someone to listen to, but that is going to be the outcome. People in the future are going to be listening to this. People that we don't know, people who aren't born yet. And so I think that's maybe the final thing that I'll leave the conversation with is we're always being watched in the now, in the present, by all those around us. If we're doing our best, then we can inspire others to maybe pick up the torch and leave their mark on their world, a better place, as it were. But it's not just the now. It's the future that is going to get to see this stuff thousands of years from now, I suppose, if they're watching this on Mars to some degree. So I think that in the past, 20, 30, 40 years ago, this medium didn't exist. They were called books, but now it's called the internet, and it's called podcasting, and it's called people will watch this hundreds of years from now. So, Mark, we are leaving our mark.
Absolutely. I do really appreciate the conversation, everybody. This has been fantastic. I think we've hit quite a bit on, making your mark, but again, there's so much more that we could talk about. There's so many lanes we could go into. So we may have to do this as a future topic and have another conversation about it. I do just want to say thanks, Mark, John, Alan, and Sean, for a fantastic conversation, because, it allows me, and not only me, but my boys and all the future generations to continue to learn all about themselves, which allows them to build all kinds of different things and grow into the people that they're meant to be. And you can do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see you all tomorrow. GMO.